Hello, everyone. This is your publisher, Kristen Brindley, and I'm here with the wonderful James Nellis. Thank you, James, for being on with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Can't wait for the next hour here.
Well, you are our March cover story. So the Nellis Group, and if you all didn't, catch this one, make sure you do. James, are you second or third generation?
I'm third generation, actually. Yeah.
Third generation real estate agent. Your team did 100 million last year, and you're over 130 million this year, right?
Yeah, very blessed. Yeah, well, as many people are seeing, the market has gone up, and what do they say that all ships rise, right? And so the important thing is to make sure that those listening and hearing this are definitely putting away money for the future.
100%. I think that that's very good advice. Well, so tell us your story. How did this happen? Like, why real estate for you? It sounds like it's in the blood, third generation. Like,
Yeah.
did you fight
Uh,
that or did you dive in? Tell us about that.
Yeah, as succinct as possible. Well, my sister and I grew up knowing that we never, ever wanted to do real estate. Absolutely not. She was a parole officer. I went and got my psychology and religion degree, and both of us were like, we're never going into this. And because back then in the early 80s, 90s, there was no such thing as leverage. There wasn't even teams. I mean, I think my mother was one of the first quote unquote teams that originated because one of her loan officers wanted to get into real estate. So she just naturally started creating a team before there was that concept in the 90s. Track back to the first generation realtor, it was actually two beyond her grandfather in Kentucky was not only the real estate agent, but it was also the mortgage bank. And so people would come to his farm and pay on their note. So it's just kind of a cool, like fast forward to today,
That's
I've taken more of the business approach to what was a family business, and my mother started in the early 80s here in town because my father was military. He was a Navy pilot, which all military tend to go through the Pentagon. And that's how we started here.
well, and that's how I ended up here too. Like I married Navy, and that's how I ended up here too. Isn't that funny?
That's
Um,
right. Go Navy.
go Navy. That's right. Well, tell us like a little bit of the progression since where was the business when got in and you and your sister and like where is it now? Like tell us about
Yeah,
that a little
it's been fun. I would imagine it's different layers, and whether you're a solo practitioner or perhaps a team, you probably can gain some wisdom from this conversation where, I think there's two sweet spots. Too many times the focus is how big and how grand and then can I get, where we forget that really it's just about what you take home. How do you get to that ultimate net profit? And there's two sweet spots. So if you said, James, go to San Diego and start all over again, because that's the only city I would ever move to because it's gorgeous there. If I had to start all over again, I'd do one of two things. I'd either build what I have today, and we'll get into that, or it would be myself, two licensed assistants, and probably two admin, and that's it. And because that's the greatest sweet spot, because as you grow a company, the more agents that you have, the more people that you have, as you know, it just takes away from the net profit. Now, the other sweet spot is where we are today. So we've gone from that family business to hiring what we call the X factor. So our core values is faith, leverage, excellence, and the X factor. And the X factor is the people that we hire, right? The right people from the ISA division that we have, which is part of our reverse prospecting, to the agents that we have as independent contractors, and even to our whole marketing division. Like we were joking about it. We have a marketing division that's bigger than most brokerages. So I think a lot of the personality of our company comes from really the passions that I have in real estate and outside of it.
So you talked about like the two sweet spots and like how many people for those. What does it look like for you like over this? Like, so it sounds like you're kind of in a sweet spot right now. Like, you grew from 100, 130. What does next year look like for you? Like, what are you guys trying to do?
Yeah, obviously, I think like most, they consider 25%. Most people stipulate that if you increase by 25%, that's natural growth. That's something that's repeatable, and that's what you should look for, right? And so a lot of that is dividing up. Okay, well, where is the business coming from? So if you have a heartbeat and a license, over 60% of your business comes from your database or your sphere, right? It's always funny to me, Kristen, when people are excited about, oh, well, 90% of my business is from XYZ. I normally think, so you could be doing more. And so how do you expand from that, right? What does it look like? And for those listening that they want all their business to be referred, that's fine. Then it's a matter of how do you expand your referral base and what does it look like? So for us, we take great pride in the fact that through our ISAs and through our pay-per-click solutions, we're generating over 20% of the business. Then beyond that, our agents, we train them to be from junior agents to senior agents. They're bringing in business as well. And I think right now it's between 36 to 37% of the business is agent SOI, not Nellis Group family, but agent SOI plus the ISA division. So we're really excited about that and really growing that. And that's where we've spent our focus the last year and a half.
That's beautiful. And you know your numbers, and what we focus on expands. I feel like you definitely know your numbers. I'm not surprised by that at all. Define success. Like, what does success mean for you, James?
Yeah. Well, it depends on the season of life you're in, right? If I go back to my early 20s, which were fun times, success was making as much money as possible, right? It is what it is. Now, I still view success with money. To me, I look at it from the charity aspect of how do we really impact the local area and communities, and it's through charity. And so what I know is the more money that I make, the more that we can make an impact, right? And so it's not this greedy thing of I need to make more dollars. The other thing is for leverage and sanity. So for me, I might employ more people so that I have more time off with my family than before, where I would burn the candles at both ends. So for me, I remember I wrote it down probably about 5 years ago. It was 100 people that I wanted to have a significant impact with over 100 people, right? And now we're not a 100-person team or company, we're 25, but the ripple effect from that 25 and the growth and what we want to see, I make less money so that I can see other people have a career in real estate. And I'm very purposeful about that. And I'm excited about not only employing them, but seeing the future they can have.
I think that's beautiful. Thinking about impact, legacy. You said your family. Tell us about your family a little bit. I'm happy for you this past
Yeah.
year.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah. So you're probably saying that because I recently married. So in July, I was married and found the right one, right? The one that you search for. My sister is in business with me and her husband. And my father, semi-retired, he's a licensed appraiser that still works with us when he wants to. Uh, and then, we're very central to this area. He lives in Fredericksburg, Nicole's in Fairfax. I live in Alexandria. So very thankful for that. Of having a family that can work together, because that's not always the case.
That is not always the case. What about outside the business? Like, what all do you all like to do outside the business?
We're very competitive by nature, love being involved in athletics. Pre-COVID, I would travel somewhere internationally every year. And so, it's an amazing, there's so many quotes on travel and what it is, but what I can tell you is every time I've been into a new place and come back, I have a different perspective. And when I think about our local market and I think about people that relocate to here, and every city I've ever visited, it always comes down to the people that you meet, the food that you eat. You can tell that I'm a foodie, and just the rapport you get with the locals, and that's what's fun for me, and what people get to experience in DC. That's truly a melting pot. I don't have to sell you on the area, but that's why I fell in love with this area. That's why I haven't moved.
I love it too, and I mean, there's so much great food here too.
Yeah.
So, what are you currently learning? Like, any books that you've read recently, or that you're in the middle of that you'd recommend?
Well, if a book moves us enough, we end up making that part of our book club. So we have an internal book club. So every staff member and agent has to read a book every month. And then once a week, we actually do it. Now it's a Zoom because we don't always meet together, but we dive into, okay, this was the chapter, this was the page, this was the number that really changed my mindset or got me excited. And so we have not only page number, what the thought was, we then have an action item. Like, what are you going to do as a result of that? Like, what does that really mean? And so it's been fun over the years to see which book really sparks innovation or sparks a new mindset. And I can tell you that over the last 10 years, the best book we read during COVID, and it was called Book of Joy. And the Book of Joy is a conversation of Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama. And it's amazing. I would recommend getting on Audible and as a book form. We loved it so much that we bought the hardback books, and we've been giving it out to all of our sphere, all of our clients, and part of our swag bags. And it's been fun to see their reaction of, oh, a book, and it has nothing to do with real estate? Huh. Right. And so there's plenty of real estate books and leadership books I could share with you, but knowing that there's a limited attention span for people, get the Book of Joy. No matter what season you are in life, I think it can impact you.
That's beautiful. What about if you could say 2 or 3 books that were really great as an agent or as a leader to read that have impacted you for real estate? What 2 or 3 books would you say have really impacted you?
Yeah, well, I'm sure you've had people share, I love Fanatical Prospecting with Jeb Blount. That's a great one. You probably haven't heard this one, No Bull, Bull with the horns, No Bull Selling. That was written back in the 70s or 80s. It's probably one of the funniest real estate books I've ever read. I'm a CRS instructor, and that was an old school CRS instructor that had written it. And it's a fantastic book. As far as other real estate minded books, of course, I know you're friends with Michael as well. I love 7 Levels of Communication. That's a great one. Just digging in deep with your sphere. The Go Giver Sells More is a great. The whole Go Giver series is great.
I love the Go Giver series.
Yeah, it's fantastic. We even incorporated. I'm trying to think through all the books that we've read. Love Does by Goff is a great book. So our mentality is we typically read a business book and then a life book and a business book and go on from that. And I've found that you really have to be working at it in totality, right? To evolve to what you want to be, right? And it's a constant evolution, or hopefully it is. I mean, if you're ever frustrated with your life and you feel like you're stuck in the mud, you should probably think back to when was the last time you had self-reflection time and what was the last book you read? And then you
That
realize
is a great piece of advice for everybody right there. What you just said is like golden, I think. Yeah, the self-reflection time. What about quotes? So since we're on this, like any favorite quotes or sayings that you have?
Yeah, a ton. So I will say 3 come to mind, and let me add 2 books. Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott. I'm sure people have shared that before. That's fantastic, and one of the quotes will come from that. And of course, from me and from my faith, I don't want to sound trite, but it'd be the Bible. And there's a passage that says, "Pleasant words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones." And so when you're thinking through the interactions you have with people throughout the day, here's what's amazing. You have an opportunity with every person that you meet, everyone that you speak with, to truly make a difference, right? To impact them. And if you think back on your own life and you think of a defining moment or time, you could probably come back and think of 2, 3, or maybe 5 people that influenced you positively. And you probably remember what they said to you. And that was that quote. And so I'm constantly engaged in, okay, there's a moment in time that I have with this person. One, selfishly, I want to learn something that I don't know that they know, right? I always walk in every conversation. They know something I don't, I want to find out. Then secondly, it's how do I improve their life with encouragement that could be like that, that could be that pleasant word, that could be healing to their bones, that could set their life on a higher trajectory than when I met with them, right? Sounds like a lofty goal, right? And I can tell you, I don't pass this every day. There's some days that I'm not that way. I'm probably, a double-edged sword when it comes to my tongue, right? Both salt and fresh water flow out of it, right? And then Fierce Conversations, I love it. I'm over at Keller Williams as a brokerage, and they've adopted some of it for a session they call Bold. It doesn't matter what brokerage you're with, but the concepts are interesting in that I've seen them now repeated over and over in other industries and other areas. And one is you can have reasons, you can have results, you can't have both. And I love that one. My agents and staff hate it because over the last decade, I've repeated it. And normally when I know that I'm going to get an excuse like, oh, James, such and such happened, I'll say, great, Kristen, well, you can have reasons, you can have results. You can't have both. So tell me why that happened. And you get kind of a different answer to that, right? Um, and then one that's really helped me, and I encourage people to do this not only within their business, but within their life, is to consistently vet people who they give access to, right? Who do you have in your inner circle? Who do you allow to stay there? And who do you want to grow it to? And there's a quote that says, I should have believed you the first time you showed me who you were, right?
Amen.
Too many
Yeah.
times we're trying to change people. We're trying to build in something. They are what they are, right? Sure, people can modify, they can adapt, but in general, the way they show up is how they're going to continue to show up. So,
No, I love everything you just said. I've taken Bold a couple of times. I'm personally Switzerland, but I love that class quite a bit.
well, it was funny, and I love Bowl too, but I was surprised how much was taken from other books, which is great, right? Repackage it, do whatever you want.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
so my challenge to everyone listening or watching this would be, have you read enough on your own to know when someone else is taking from something else, right? And you've seen this. Like, I've sat in audiences with people and someone drops a bomb and you're like, oh my God, that's amazing. And I see people react, and then I'm thinking, I read that last week. That wasn't his, that wasn't hers, which is fine. Like, I'm not throwing any shade. I'm not, anything like that, but it's just, are you well read enough to know, oh, well, yeah, they took it from here, or that's a duplicate of this, or here's the real origination of the context of what they mean, you know? So
New
I'll give you an example. And this
concepts
is when
or
you're thinking about success. I'll give you an example of probably the most misinterpreted quote ever. And it's, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, right? People use that at sporting events. People use that all these different places, and they've completely missed the context. Because the context was, whether I have plenty or I'm in wants, I can trust Christ in all things. And so whether you're listening to this podcast and this year you've made the most amount of money you've ever made, or you're looking at it and going, how is my ship not rising like everybody else? Whether in plenty or want, you have that sustaining ability within your faith. I mean, to me, it's just fun when you say quotes like, okay, do you know the quote? And more importantly, does it have context within your life and where you want to go?
what do you think sets you apart, makes you different, James?
Right. Besides my good looks, I would say just a true passion to serve and to impact. And I know it sounds like words, but I think we have done it for the last 30 years. I've done it for the last 25, that people can see that we show up, right? We show up with passion. We put our clients first. They know that. And that's why we get so much referral business as well, where people keep coming back to us because we know. I met, this is crazy. Just 48 hours ago, I met with a client where her and her husband are probably getting divorced. They just did this massive remodel in North Arlington. Like, it was gorgeous. I'm walking through, I'm like, oh my goodness. And I had seen it a year ago before they did it. And yeah, I was thinking I could move into this place. This place was fantastic. And I looked at her and she's like, well, I'm looking at all options, this, and this. And I said, you know what? My true hope for you is that you get to stay here, that I don't sell your house, and you live in your dream for at least the next 5 years. And when you can take that perspective to your client, to your industry, and the way that you do business, I think you show up differently automatically, and people see that genuineness and how you approach it.
Care about the person and not just the sale, right? Care about the person.
Right. And not only that, but bringing solutions. I think that's also a differentiator. In first 5 years in the business, there's only a couple ways you approach it, right? It's like a hammer and a nail. Like, this is the only answer. This is the only answer. Here's my 7 scripts. Here's this, here's that. When you get, I guess I could say, old like me, right? When you get to a certain level, then it's like, okay, after 20 plus years in the business, I know that there's another solution. You can go this way, you can go this way, and presenting all the options to your client.
Well, and you have a couple different programs, a couple different solutions that you've created that are pretty great. Can you talk about like maybe one or two of those that people might not know to do?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, we go on for a couple of days as just as far as what it could look like, but the short answer of it is, it's been fun. I've seen just in the last 3 or 4 years, other brokerages kind of adapting some of it, but what we did was we've had enough success within our business that we've been able to basically stockpile some money. And so we've leveraged that money as a differentiator. So an example of that is, We can walk into somebody's house, and if they want to be an iBuyer, like if they just want to sell it for cash, we can buy it. Right. And we have that. You've probably heard like the guaranteed sale program. It's very similar to that, but this is all internal to the Nellis Group. We also have private money that we loan out. So I can tell you each year, there's probably anywhere from 3 to 5 transactions that if that buyer doesn't have the cash from the sale of their home, they can't buy the next home. They're qualified, but they just don't have the money. So we'll actually do our own private hard money lending. And I wouldn't even phrase it hard money lending because we don't crush them like most people do. We're not charging points. We're not doing all these other things because it's really a service added. And so we'll let them borrow 60,000 or 100,000 because that's what they need for their down payment on the next house. We had one client.
It's like a bridge loan, like that you do internally.
Basically. Yeah, it's a promissory note. It's basically what it is it's an equity line on their current property without the red tape. If any of your clients have tried to get an equity line in the last year and a half, it's not going to happen. And it's certainly not going to happen within 60 days, right? And so we're kind of just that alternative solution. Like they don't have to do it, but here's another solution. You know, the typical equity line is going to be about 3.5%, 4% just until you pay it off. Ours is really simple. We charge 10% on the money. So you borrow, 100,000, you're going to pay back 110, whether you borrow it for 30 days or 90 days, right? It's really simple, Yeah. We have staging solutions where our clients can pay for staging and they don't have to pay the monthly freight. And we got it down to like an extremely low price. You'll see that play a bigger role when the market slows, right? That you have to do certain things and the clients are looking for things. And so, that's an example of just a couple of things that come to mind that really separate us, where we're providing solutions that they haven't even thought of. A lot of our clients want to fix up their house, but they don't have the cash, but they have the equity. So same thing, we fix it up for them. We get reimbursed and paid at closing and their home sells for more money. Right.
Yeah. No, and you were even doing that. You were doing that before, like Curbio and some of these other, max house price. You were doing that stuff before any of those, were around. I know because I remember you talking about it. What about? I was like, that's great. That's really smart. What are some reasons, or the biggest reason do you think for your success?
Oof. Well, one, I would say my faith, the fact that I do believe that God has put us in a position or a platform where we can influence others. The fact that, like you said, we put the clients first. And then I think just the innovation of, how do we position ourselves different than everyone else? I'll give you an example. We've been doing real estate marketing video since 2007. In 2007, nobody in the industry was doing it. And I can tell you why they weren't doing it. It was extremely expensive.
Very expensive compared
to for every 1 minute of edited video. So like, let's say, because back then it wasn't, you have to do it in 60 seconds or 90 seconds. Yeah, Kristen, for a 3-minute video, do you have any idea how much that cost back in 2007? They were charging.
How much was it?
So for the general market, they were charging $1,000 per minute.
Holy moly.
Yeah, exactly. Well, now, of course, there's what the market is, what you can negotiate with clients. So I had a client that was a Fox freelance videographer who did it for me for $1,000 for 3 minutes. Like, you think about that today and you're like, oh my gosh, James got robbed, right? Back then, that was an extreme deal, right? To get it for that. Fast forward today, if somebody's listening and thinking, oh, I really want to have video as part of my business and what I do. I mean, you're extremely overpaying if you pay more than $200 or $250 for a video, right? I mean, that's just how far video and the simplicity of it is involved. And so I would say not just that, but like we have a whole marketing team that just like, we have one person that does the blog and the copywriting, we actually typically have 2 videographers employed with us because that's really the medium that you should be forcing your content through, right? I mean, you guys have seen that just with what's evolved within social media. So
100%. I think that's very forward thinking and very smart. What about the biggest failure maybe that you've learned from?
Oh, I mean, I fail all the time. I would say, it's interesting when you talk about failure. I would say I've been blessed in that my success has outweighed my failure. And it's also, I would say, hidden some flaws even within myself, right? So I'm that perpetual optimist, like this is going to work. This is going to work. And all you got to do is show me a little bit of light. And like, I'm thinking it's still working. So like one of my biggest ones was years ago, started a real estate tech solution that was going to do the long tail search. Like it's a proven method. It still works, but it
Yeah.
wasn't working for me. And I lost a lot of money. So, you know, I won't even say how much. It's painful to remember that. And then fast forward, that's okay. I now I can laugh at it, right? You go from mourning to crying to laughing, I think. And then recently was even a flip. So I did 2 flips in DC. One's a luxury flip, but I got caught in the middle of COVID, and it's a historic home. So like I'm caught with certain things I can do or not do. So I think just going in eyes wide open and understanding that anytime you invest capital or anytime you're doing something outside of technically maybe your day job, you know, do you have the money to sustain it? Right. And that's, I mean, not everybody does. And people can get in trouble with that. Like one of the flips we took over, somebody else had actually, it was going to become a 3 or a 4 unit condo building in DC. And it was a shell because they ran out of money. So they're like, well, we don't have enough money to fix it. We're just going to throw it on the market and see if we can sell it. So, yeah.
Well, and that was a good find right there, but that was definitely one of their learning experiences, it sounds like. What is something you've done that other real producers absolutely should do you think?
Something I've done that they should do. Well, and you've kind of heard me share about it, like really get involved with local charities. So they probably think right now there's probably at least 3 charities that they probably spend time, money, or resources with. And so I would encourage them to get on the board of directors to dig deep into how can you make a true impact. You know, too many times we're just scattered everywhere. Everybody asks for money and you're willing to just give money here, here, and here. Well, there's another book called Give and Take. And it's a great book about being strategic in how you give. And so rather than giving out to like 100 charities, can you be focused on 3? And what can that look like for your business? You know, and even partnering with them where it's a win for them if they give you business and vice versa, right? And so I would say, you know, to dig deep with that, we already mentioned it. You should definitely hire. Remember when I said one of the other solutions is be yourself, have 2 licensed assistants and maybe 2 others. Well, one of them, even if it's your license isn't, should be a videographer. Like I highly recommend that, so they can start putting the content together for you and putting it online and doing all that. Because if you've been in the business for a long time, you know what you're good at. I love video. I even used to spend my time cutting up the video. You can go back and look. My video is horrible. Like if you go back and look at 2005, 6, 8, whatever, when I was still trying to do it on the side, no. And guess what? Doing a video is not going to make you the money, right? But the concept of it is the innovative way that you market properties will help your clients. And so that's definitely something that, and here's what I found, you can hire it out, right? But think of it this way. Let's say you're going to plan to do 200 or 300 videos next year, and you hire that out, put $250 on each video and tell me you weren't better off just hiring somebody full-time. Right. But I know that can be scary to say, I'm going to hire just a videographer, right? It's very scary. But that's an example.
So what's the greatest lesson you've ever learned, James?
Whoa, greatest lesson I've ever learned, man. I think the cost of love. I don't think I've ever said that out loud before. The cost of love. If you love something wholeheartedly, it could betray you, right? And don't worry, I'm not going to some dark area in my soul, because you know, when you love something and you're truly passionate about it, right, you can go perhaps too far with it. When you wholeheartedly love something, I mean, someone could leave you, right? Like if you think of like the real estate company, there are many people I've taken off the street. They were hardly making $30,000. I set them on a path and they're no longer with me. And that's okay, because to me, as I said, it was about finding those people to empower them, right? And so one challenge within the real estate or any industry, like once people get successful, they may forget how they got there. And so my constant evolution is, how do I continue to love no matter where the people go, right? And the people that work for me know that I'm all in. Like whatever you need, you have. Right. Those that aren't with me, they know that, okay, well, it's completely opposite of that. Right. And I don't say it in a negative way. It's just, I mean, that as you've built different companies and what that could look like. So, I think the greatest lesson is to love, to love without a grudge, right? To
Yeah.
really be vulnerable, to let people know that you're there to support them and protect them in any way you can.
I think that's really well said. And the longer you're in the industry, that's some wisdom that is to be um, looked at again. Like it's something to be revisited if you've especially been in the industry a long time with a large team or a large staff. Like, I feel like that's some great wisdom to talk about and revisit. What would you like to be remembered for, James?
Ooh, uh, are we attending my funeral? Like, why am I, why am I being
That's
remembered?
one of my favorite questions, like I feel like visiting that place is good for people. Like,
I'm
yeah.
only, I'm only 45 and you got me on the chopping block.
Hey
Yeah.
man, I'm real close to there with you. We're good.
Well, there was another book called The Dash. Did you ever read The Dash? The Dash was a great book. And think of the year that you were born. I'll make it simple. I was born 1976, right? And then you have the dash. The dash is the time that you live in life. And then, of course, at some point, like you were saying, how were you remembered? And so when I think of quote unquote the dash that I want to leave, to me it would be that that he was a light, that I was a light, that I created a path, not just for success in life or in business, but also in life, and that for my faith that I was a light for others to see a path to God, and in relationships that I was a light that when people walked in the room they were attracted to me, just purely by the way they would feel around me, and so as an illustration or as a concept, just that wow, James was really a light to others in the way that he lived, the way he walked, and the way he encouraged them to grow.
I love that. I feel like that's a reflected, well thought out answer right there. Like you've actually reflected on those things. Um, are there any like secret weapons or a habit that you attribute a lot of your success to? Any other tidbits you want to share?
Well, I think it depends on where you are in the process, where you are in your business, right? I think one of the secrets to my success today is that, man, I was a grinder. I worked harder than I believe anybody else that I knew at that time. And I would burn at both ends. And I'm not saying that that's the way to create family life balance. I'm not saying that, but if
No,
you're
I feel you. I've been there. I've done that too. Yep.
yeah, if you're in a new industry and you want to do well and you want to make it to the next level, you're going to have a minimum of 3 to 5. So if you just got your real estate license, let me tell you, if you want to be a huge success or a big success, your first 3 to 5 years is a grind. You're going to have to put in more work. You're going to have to do more things than everybody else. And I think it's interesting. That is a key to success, to a level, because talent just goes so far, right? You see it all the time in the NFL or whatnot, that, yeah, this person's super talented, but they're nowhere, right? And so hard work has to get you there, but you also have to think connections. That our industry proves that. More importantly, think of musicians. How many great musicians have you seen at a local coffee shop or a local bar where you're like, oh my God, they're fantastic, but they're not on the radio and they're not a quote unquote success. And so to me, it's a matter of connections. Do you have the right connections? Are you making the connections? And more importantly, for me, what I've learned for success is my success is not in finding connections, it's making connections for other people. So finding out where they need to go, how they need to do it, and saying, great, you need to get connected with this person, with that person. And if you can do that for your top 50, your top 100, they will send you so much business you can't even think about it, right? And so I think that's a big part of it.
Well, we really appreciate you here at Real Producers. Thank you for being on one of our covers, being our March cover. And it's a pleasure to talk to you today, James. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Hope something I said could be of value and could hopefully maybe change mindset or someone's life.
I believe so. Have a good day, everybody. You heard it here at Real Producers.